Hi everyone, welcome to our speed webinar. This is in place of workshop 1. Obviously we can't have you down here, unfortunately, in Thurles today, but we're going to spend the morning going through kind of the key components of the workshop. And of course then as we go through the day, if you have any questions, type them in and then we can answer them when it kind of comes to a break. So the main components that we're going to chat through today are your warm-up for a speed session, be it for a track and field athlete or for any of your team sports that you'd be dealing with. And then we'll also mainly focus on acceleration, deceleration, maximum velocity and change of direction. And then workshop 2, we mainly focus on, your plyometrics and other ways of developing speed. Okay, so I suppose we'll start off chatting through warm-up. Warm-up is probably one of the most important components of your speed session, okay, to get the players ready for the session that's ahead, okay? So often I find that a lot of people, when they put together their warm-ups, they get to the end of the warm-up and the players aren't ready to run at 100%, okay? So remember, sprinting is going to be a full-body explosive exercise, so the warm-up should lead you to that, okay? So warm-up, I suppose, will always start with your foam rolling, trigger point use, etc., spending 5 to 10 minutes on any of those little areas that they need to do. And then we'd advise that you use the ramp protocol. So from your previous workshops, you probably will have gone through plenty of your ramp protocols, but I suppose just to spend a little bit more time thinking about it in the speed sense. Okay, so your raise, activate, your mobility, and then your potentiate. Okay, so you might spend 3 to 4 minutes on your raise, jogging, skipping, just bringing up the body temperature, your mobility work, a lot of focus in on the hips, hip mobility, your shoulders, moving your shoulders, because obviously it's going to be big arm actions that we're looking for when sprinting. And then again, even down to your ankle, making sure you include some of your ankle mobility, your activate, making sure you get your main muscle groups, glutes, hamstrings, quads, calves, back, chest, everything done within that space, okay? So again, don't just do 10 squats and 10 lunges and then move on and you think that's kind of done. Spend a lot more time on that, okay? What I find quite useful for speed sessions or any running sessions that you're going to be doing for your warm-ups is maybe to do an exercise, do a slight little jog, do another exercise slightly quicker, another exercise slightly quicker, and just gradually build up the intensity of running, maybe over 20 or 30 meters in between each exercise, and that will allow you, when it comes to actually sprinting, that you're able to sprint. Okay, the potentiate section then is probably the most important section when it comes to the warm-up to really ensure the players or the athlete is ready to run at 100% intensity. Okay, so for this, I'd advise including your A march drills, your B marches, A skips, etc., some plyometrics, maybe some jumping, and then finishing the warm-up with maybe 3 20-meter sprints at 70%, 80% and 90% effort. So that will mean that when it comes to the first sprint of the actual session, players will be able to run that first rep at 100% intensity, okay? So if you start the main session and you're going to be doing 10 10-meter sprints, and after the 3rd or 4th sprint, the player walks back to you and says, oh yeah, now I finally feel I'm good, I'm ready to go, I think I can pick up the pace a bit. That means you failed in your warm-up, okay? So players should be ready on that first rep to run at 100% intensity. Okay, so what I'll do now is kind of maybe go over some of those A march and B march drills. We'll have a look at them, look at kind of the mechanics, look at the posture that we're talking about that will help lead into the main session. Of course, if you're dealing with somebody who's maybe never done these drills before, you can just have these drills then as your main part of your session, okay? So they don't have to be in the warm-up, but my advice would be to include them as your end stage warm-up that gets ready for the main session and leave the main session for the actual sprinting or running that might occur. Okay, so I'm going to talk through some of these drills. There's loads of videos up online where you can go back and look at them a bit more, but I'm just going to chat through them now. So if you have any questions, of course, type them into the box as we go along. Again, I'm just going to pick maybe 4 or 5 of these drills to go through. There's loads more out there that you can do. My advice to you would be whenever you're picking any of these drills, have your reason behind why you're picking them, okay? So if you decide to pick a B march drill, why are you picking that? What are you trying to work on with the athlete, okay? So I'm going to show you kind of maybe the 4 or 5 key ones that I'd use, that would be my go-to ones to start off with, and then of course you can build from there. When we're doing these drills, I generally start off having the player do them over 10 meters and then building it up to 15 meters, 20 meters. And if you're dealing with a track and field athlete, you might build them up to around 30 meters. Okay, so you might do 2 A marches over 10 meters with just a walk back recovery and then go again, okay? You don't need to take a minute or 2 between each of these drills. Generally walk back, take a couple of seconds and go again is fine. Starting off, I'd probably have players do around 8 reps in total. So you might do, 3 A marches, 3 A skips, and 2 high knees, and that's plenty to start off with. And again, you can build it over distance or adding repetitions as they progress and they get a bit better. Okay, so we'll start off with your A march, which would be my absolute go-to one because it really teaches good posture and everything that you're looking for from your ankle, hips, knees, and all those positions. Okay, so from your very basic starting point, you're just looking to get to a 90-degree knee angle at your hip and your knee and dorsiflexed ankle, okay? Arms should be moving hip to lip, okay, or cheek to cheek, whichever is the cue that you want to use. Okay, so just walking forward, making sure that you're nice and tall through your stance leg, that you're locking it out, and you're lifting yourself nice and high, that you're not sitting down. Okay, so we'll show you that one more time. Okay, so cues, knee up, toe up, tall through your stance leg, making sure that you're slightly leaning forward, most definitely not leaning back on yourself. Okay. We can, of course, look to progress that, okay, where you come up onto the ball of your foot, okay, which is obviously more like your sprinting action. So coming up, distributing the weight from your big toe across to your little toe, and just holding at the top, just working on having really good form and really good posture. Okay, so that would be your A march drill. Then we can look to move on to your A skip drill, okay? So once you're happy that the player is able to hold those nice positions, we can add in the skip, okay? What we're working on here is a claw back action, okay? So clawing back means pulling back your foot so that you're scraping the ground to push you slightly in that direction so that obviously you'll move forward, okay? So again, from that nice high knee position, pulling back, landing with your foot underneath your center of mass. I'm not going to strike the ground out in front here, okay, because that's going to block me, that's going to slow me down. So getting my foot back underneath my center of mass, okay? If somebody's struggling with arm movements to begin with, take them out of the way and just put your hands on your hips and go through it as that. But I'll show you now a slow kind of A skip. Okay, so again, I'm just adding in a little hop to each movement, okay? So you can take your time just to get that kind of skipping motion first and then work on that kind of moving forward, okay? So that would be your A skip. So again, if you just do it on the spot, again, I'm keeping my knee up, my toe up, and I'm pulling the ground back behind me, okay? So that would be your A skip. All right, again, I might do that over 10 meters, walk back, do it again. The first time you do that with players, they're going to feel like they're almost doing an Irish dance, so be patient with them. Maybe allow the first rep or 2 just to get kind of the awkwardness out of the way, but they will improve over time, okay? Our next one then would be your B march, okay? And for that drill, we're working on opening out, okay? So obviously when we're sprinting and we're at top flight, when we get to this position here, we naturally should open our leg up slightly and then pull it back behind us. So that's what we're working on with this drill here. So again, I'm just going to work on coming up, kicking the leg out, and then pulling it down, okay, as I would have done with my A march. So up, out, and down, okay? Hands on my hips if I'm finding it hard. Focusing on toe up towards my shin the whole time, and pulling the ground down back underneath myself. Okay, so obviously you can see there, need good hamstring flexibility to get that leg out straight. If you have somebody who's got very tight hamstrings, they're going to get to this position here and then kick downwards. Okay, they're going to lose that high knee. So being able to kick out in front is going to be important. Okay, so that's your your B march, and again, then we can do this with a B skip. Okay, so your B skip, to be honest, I think is primarily should be used for kind of sprinters. I don't think it should be really used for your team sport athletes, but I'll just show you anyway. Also a really good drill if you are working with hurdlers, okay, because obviously that's the motion that they use going over hurdles. So I'll just show you a B skip. Okay, so again, a bit more challenging. So my advice to any of you that want to implement these kind of drills into any coaching that you're doing or will be doing is to spend some time yourself kind of getting good at demonstrating them. Okay, coaching these drills are far easier when you can do a good demonstration. So if you demonstrate something poorly, the athletes will probably copy you and will do it poorly themselves. So take your time, get some space, go out there and maybe learn those drills, and then it's better for you to implement them into training yourself, okay? Because you can just demonstrate and then they'll kind of copy you. Okay, so they'd be my go-to start ones. Again, mostly anything I've done there, we're focusing on maximum velocity mechanics, okay, which I will talk about later on. But again, because I'm in a tall, upright posture, I'm standing upright, that's going to be more maximum velocity. Okay, so two more drills we'll go through. We're going to be ankling and high knees. Again, these are two really good drills, again, to start off with. These drills are easier to start off with because you are upright, as opposed to acceleration. The drills we're going to focus on, we're going to be at a 45-degree angle or so. So again, starting off with somebody who's a novice, this posture is that little bit easier. So you might start, even though maybe acceleration is more important in the sport you're dealing with, but some of these drills are just easier to teach because we are more upright, okay? So ankling then is our next one, okay? So if we think of running and mechanics, the movement of our leg is primarily heel up towards the bum this way and a knee up in front, okay? That the movement shouldn't be back here first, okay? So that's a big fault that you'd see with a lot of people where they try and, you know, get the heel to the bum this way and then pull their knee through, whereas realistically, that's the movement that happens from behind, okay? So it's heel coming towards the bum this way. So again, if you are somebody who uses butt kicks as a drill to try and help sprint mechanics, scrap it. I'd only ever use this as a hamstring warm-up exercise, okay? So the movement, if you are to be doing a butt kick drill, should be this movement here, okay? Knee up, heel up, okay? But for coming back down to our ankling, we're just starting at the basics of that, okay? So what we want to do is have the heel your ankle on your right leg, say coming up to the ankle on the opposite leg, stepping over and down. So making small little circles like that, okay? So once we're happy we get that kind of movement done well, then we can kind of bring it up a little bit higher, maybe to where our Achilles and our calf meet, okay? So bringing it up a little bit higher. And then when we get full confidence, we can get up and over. So a coaching cue that you'd use for maximum velocity would be stepping over the inside knee. Okay, so that means stepping over this knee on the inside, up, over, and down. Okay, but I'm going to show you ankling to begin with, and then we'll progress through. Okay, so ankling. Again, I'm just going to take little steps, thinking of toe up and stepping over that ankle. Okay, so nice and light. I'm trying to stay pretty tall. I'm not allowing my hips to drop down here. I want to stay nice and tall and upright, okay? Landing on the ball of my foot, and I'm just making small little circles, okay? Again, I'll progress that, where I'm stepping over my calf, and again, I won't show you because I'm scared my microphone will fall off, but stepping over the knee then would be your big high knee drill. Okay, but again, if you are coaching somebody on a high knee drill, try and focus on that position there, okay, as opposed to maybe back here or throwing the leg really far out in front. Okay, so that would be your ankling coming into your high knees. Okay, and then finally, another drill that we'll just chat through is wall clawing and wall recovery drills. Okay, I find these are really beneficial if you've got somebody that's maybe struggling kind of with this movement. Instead of having them do it going forwards, we'll do it against a wall. So let's move this out of the way. So I'd have the athlete come and hold onto a wall or something that's kind of stable to allow them balance properly. Okay, and what we're going to do is exactly what I was just showing you there. Okay, so we're going to start here. I'm nice and tall through this stance leg. Okay, I haven't collapsed. I've lifted myself up. I'm squeezing my bum, squeezing my quads, locking myself nice and tall. I've locked and engaged my core. So from here, I'm just going to scrape back and then pull my leg up through. Okay, so I'm just making those circles. Okay, so the movement again is up the leg, out and down. And I'm just trying to scrape the ground. Okay, just touch the ground, get off it, nice and quick, and do it. You know, I might do 10 on one side, turn around, and again, I might do 10 on this side. Okay. Again, good hip conditioning going on here, good control, good little bit of core work, okay, to hold myself nice and tall. Okay, so that's the wall clawing drill. You might do 2 sets of 10 on each side to start with, maybe bring it up to 3 sets of 15 reps on each side, okay? So that's wall clawing, and then your wall recovery drill, okay, would be, so in a recovery position is going from my toe off. So if we imagine I'm in a sprint motion here, I'm toe off at the back, and I just want to work on pulling this leg through and getting down again, okay? Just doing one cyclical motion on that right side. Okay, so toe off, I'm coming through, heel, coming up, stepping over, knee up, down, back to my starting position here. Again, trying to stay nice and tall. Don't drop your hips down, okay? So again, I might just keep my hand on my hip. I might do 5 on each side. Just trying to make contact with the ground. Small little scrape motion, but working on pulling the leg through nice and tall, okay? So I might do 5 on one side, 5 on the other side, build it up again to maybe 15 on each side. Okay, so they're my starting points of drills that I'd use. Another one maybe might be your straight leg running, which is kind of exactly as you imagine, working on a straight leg and pulling back from your glutes and your hamstrings and doing some conditioning work like that, okay? So they'd be my starting point drills that I'd use. So if you are maybe planning for some sessions that are going to be taking place in a couple of weeks' time, maybe now is a really good time for you guys to start doing these drills at home yourself, have a go at them, try and get perfecting them in some sense. You might only be comfortable coaching an A-march and maybe the wall clawing to begin with, but get going on those drills, and then hopefully in a couple of weeks' time when it comes to getting back out coaching again, you'll be in a nice comfortable position to start those. Okay, so that's kind of taken us through like a really good kind of warm up now at this stage, okay? So if I did my raise, my activate, my mobility, again, I don't mind if people do mobility first and then your activation or intertwine them, that's fine. And then I've done a set of these drills, and then I've finished off now with, okay, we're gonna do some build-up runs, 20 meters in distance, because the session ahead is focusing on acceleration. First one at 70%, walk back, take a minute. 80% walk back, take a minute. 90%, okay players, grab some water, we're now ready to start our main session. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about now is acceleration. Okay, it's the most prevalent element of speed, I suppose, in team sports, court sports, track and field. So it's probably one of the most important areas that you will work on, but again, don't forget the other areas. So a lot of people spend so much time on speed where they're actually just focusing on getting somebody running fast and accelerating that they forget the other components, which we're going to talk about later on. But because it's so important, we'll spend a good bit of time on that today. So when I talk about acceleration, what you should be thinking about coaching is having a really good body position. Okay, by body position, for acceleration, you should be looking for ideally around a 45-degree lean. Okay, if you're coaching somebody who's never done any form of acceleration training before, just getting them to even a 60-degree lean is a good starting point. Okay, when we say lean, that they don't hinge from the hips, okay, that they do have a full body lean. Okay, so I've got a straight line when I run from my shoulder to my hip down to my ankle. Okay. We're looking for triple extension on our back leg and triple flexion, okay? So toes up is a big coaching cue that you should think about when it comes to acceleration. So toes up, knee up, okay? So posture again, straight line shoulder, hip down to my ankle. Arm action is going to be a little bit more exaggerated in acceleration, okay? Use my arms to help propel me forward, okay? Driving from my shoulder back, okay? As opposed to when we're at maximum velocity, we're a little bit neater, okay? Ideally, for acceleration, you know, if we look at the 100-meter model of the sprinter, the head will stay in line with the torso, all right? But obviously for team sports, we have to be able to have our head up, okay? We need to be able to accelerate but see what's happening in our field of vision, okay? But when you're starting off, just focus on having the head down, okay? Because what will happen is if you try and coach good body posture and head up, that's naturally going to lift somebody's torso. So my advice would be starting off, focus, you know, on your head down, where they can focus on really good body positions, and as they get better, then we'll look at adding in reaction, and that'll naturally lift their head, but we'll still keep them in a good body posture. Okay, so again, 45-degree angle, straight line shoulder, hip down to my ankle, triple extension, yeah, and good solid core position, okay? So the starting point of a drill for acceleration work would be wall drives, okay? So these, again, I've seen them used a lot. Some people coach them really well. Some people coach this very poorly. So again, what I've just mentioned there is what we're looking for, okay? So I'm going to show you today using a box. I generally find actually starting off with your hands on a box is a little bit easier than hands up against a wall. It just, because your hands underneath your shoulders here, just makes you a little bit more stable through your core and to be in a slightly better position. Okay, so what we're going to do to start off with, okay, so again, I'm going to about 45-degree angle. If I'm more of a novice, I might just come up a little bit taller, just to make sure that I can actually hold the positions that I'm looking for. Okay, so I'll come down to about a 45-degree angle. I'm on the balls of my feet. I'm not up on my tippy toes, okay? So I'm on the balls of my feet. I am slightly pushing my heels down towards the ground here because this isn't where I sprint, okay? I sprint from here, pushing through that big toe, okay? So here I am here, and I'm just going to focus on pulling a foot up towards the box and back down, okay? I'm engaged. Again, when I come up through here, I'm squeezing my bum, quads, hamstrings, okay? And I'm pushing back through the ground, okay? So if you're going to use one coaching cue for acceleration, my go-to cue would always be push. Okay, push, push, push. Okay, sometimes they'll ask you push where? Push the ground back behind you. Okay, Newton's laws, equal opposite reactions. If I push the ground that way, it's going to send me that way. Okay, so pushing down. So again, we might just do 10 punches on each leg. Again, when I come up, I'm looking for around a 90-degree angle here, or for the foot, I suppose, maybe to be more perpendicular to the ground. I don't want to be here like this. Okay? So again, when it comes to mechanics of acceleration, something that you might read about is having a low heel recovery. Okay, so again, our starting point here would be that. Okay, so remember, low heel recovery basically means this coming this way, keeping your heel low to the ground, as opposed to stepping over, which is what we mentioned when it comes to maximum velocity mechanics. Okay, so if I map out my heel recovery over my acceleration up to my maximum velocity, my heel recovery, my first step should be low, and then my next step will be maybe a bit higher, I'm coming upwards with my posture, and now I'm stepping up and over. Okay, so that's what's meant by low heel recovery, and then stepping over high heel recovery. Okay, so again, we'll start with a couple of these. So I'm going to just do maybe 6 knee punches. Again, I'm just working on a good posture. So faults, general faults that you'll find when somebody's doing this, they might start off nicely with their first 2 steps, then maybe posture starts to go, they collapse, okay? Or else they drop their hips down towards the ground, or they lose extension through that back leg, okay? So don't allow them, if that starts to fault, stop, take a break, take 20, 30 seconds, give them a little bit of coaching, a little bit of advice, back in, do a couple more, okay? So that's your starting point. So I'd start off with maybe doing 2 sets of 10, 2 sets of 8, and then coming back and moving on to your next one if they're solid and they're able to hold that, which would be a drop and drive, okay? So your drop and drive is starting in your high position here, drop and punch, hold, hold, hold. Okay, and just pausing for a moment before you move on to the next leg. Okay, so again, I might start off with 8 punches, might start off with 10 punches, take a break and come back in, okay? And then finally what you would do, once you're happy with that, you can progress to multiple punches, okay? So you might do 3 in a row. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, pause. Okay, build that to 5, 6, 8, and up to 10 punches, I suppose. You might build up to about 12, but I wouldn't really do more than that because after 12 steps, that main phase of acceleration should be over and we should be kind of coming upright a little bit more with posture as opposed to being down at that 45-degree angle. Okay, so that's I suppose my go-to starting drill for acceleration. Okay, because that's really important of getting your good posture, honing in on what you're really looking for, and then we can move on to kind of actual drills where you're going to be moving and running forward. Okay, so if we move on then to talk about drills that you could do. Okay, my next go-to drill would be a falling start. Okay, and for that drill, what I'd have somebody do is start with their feet hip-width apart, okay? Coming up slightly onto the balls of your feet, again, not up onto our tippy toes, but through that big toe, so heels slightly up, holding my arms at around 90 degrees, and I'm just gonna allow myself fall as far forward as possible. Once I feel I'm gonna hit the deck, I'm gonna pull that leg through and push, 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 push. Okay, so I'll take a step or 2 here. Okay, so coming up onto the balls of my feet, I'm going to fall and punch, punch, punch. Okay? So again, what you're looking for there is the coach is how far forward can they fall? Are they only falling, you know, maybe this much? Okay? What I do then is I'd actually come in and maybe, when we can be non-socially distanced, put my hands on their shoulders and allow them fall into me, okay? And I'd be holding onto their shoulders here, so then they get idea of, no, fall forward, okay? Trust yourself to get a good forward lean. And then the next thing I'm looking at is what's happening that first foot as it comes through, okay? Naturally, that foot should come through pretty quick because you don't want to hit the deck, you don't want your face to hit the ground. But is that first step coming through like this, or are they doing something where they take a big step up and put the foot down, okay, which is obviously we don't want that. Okay, so working again, heel recovery low to get that first foot down and then pushing the ground back behind, okay? So again, some people work with a cue. I think push is the best one. Other people sometimes need to work on punching that knee out in front. Okay, so that might be another cue that I'd use. Punch or push, 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 push. So that'll be my next one, go to falling start. I'd start that drill maybe only even over 5 meters because you can get a good volume of them done with that. And then progressing it out to 10, 15, and up to 20 meters. Okay, something I should probably mention at this point now is when it comes to programming your speed, it's always quality over quantity. Okay, so we want to get good quality repetitions done. We're not working, if somebody comes to you and says we want this player to get faster from A to B, you need to get them faster from A to B as opposed to, we're not working on repeat sprints at the moment where they can do it over and over and over again. Okay, I'd focus on getting them fast first and then building on your sprint repeatability, okay, which is something we'll cover in the next workshop. Okay, so when we talk about quality over quantity, ideally what I think of is realistically you should have no more than maybe 12 repetitions of actual sprinting done. Okay, and when I use the number 12, that's probably 12 10-meter sprints. Okay, so you might one day do your falling starts. You're going to do 6 falling starts over 5, and then you might do 8 10-meter sprints from a 2-point start next. Okay, I'll go on to a few more drills that you could use, but just to get an idea of what you might include. Okay, you might do 2 sets of 4 20-meter sprints. Okay, there you've got 8 repetitions over 20 meters, or you might do 6 runs over 30 meters if you're dealing with a track and field sprinter. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you are doing any of your programming. Quality over quantity, volume of reps in and around 12. You might go up to 15 if some of those reps are only over 5 meters. Your recovery then, okay, so recovery, a guideline you should go by is have 1 minute rest for every 10 meters sprinted. Okay, so that means if I run 10 meters, the recovery, the minimum recovery I should get is 1 minute, okay? And that's kind of from when I walk back plus 40 seconds probably, okay? So depending on how you're coaching, that's the time where you can add in, okay, feedback, okay? So when you're doing one-on-one, it's quite easy and the feedback that you can give. When you've got a whole group of players, that can be a little bit more difficult, and even more difficult again if you have a coach roaring, screaming and shouting at you that he wants them to be running more so than taking rest and recovery, okay? But rest is going to be key to getting the quality in, okay? So during that time when they walk back and they've got a minute recovery, that's where you'll add in your coaching cues, okay? Okay, everyone, that one was quite good. Everybody worked really well on their forward lean. That was really good to see, okay? In this repetition, I really want everybody to work on maybe driving your arms more, okay? Use your arms a bit more in this next rep, and then that might give you another 20 seconds to go, okay, Billy, you work on this, James, you work on this, and whoever else, maybe you're gonna work on this area. So take that time to give the feedback, and that'll allow the recovery to fully take place without people feeling like they're standing around and they're not doing anything, okay? It does get a bit more challenging when you are doing reps up to 30 meters because obviously there's more time there. Again, that could be a space where if you're dealing with hurling or football, where they might do some light ball work, light passing, just to keep them moving. Again, think about the conditions that you're working in. Are you in an indoor environment where it's nice and warm? Are you out on a cold, soggy pitch where standing around for 3 minutes is probably not going to be beneficial to the players? So again, think about the environment you're working in, how you can keep them warm, but obviously making sure full recovery happens, okay? So a couple of more drills then that you could do would be, so again, think of the sport that you're dealing with, okay? Think about how acceleration happens in those sports. So do they do a lot of acceleration from a standing position? Might they just be standing and they have to accelerate from nowhere to a ball, okay? So tennis, for example, they could be standing and then they have to accelerate very quickly. Okay, in team sports, more likely they're going to be, jogging on the pitch and then have to take off and accelerate. Okay, do they have to turn and accelerate in the sport that they're doing? So think about the sport, again, look at the demands of the sport, and then pick your drills from that, okay? But whenever you go from a standing, a jogging, a turning, a sprint, nothing changes in terms of what you're looking for from the mechanics, okay? So what I see with a lot of field sport athletes is that they will, they'll be jogging, they have to take off and accelerate, and they take off and they accelerate in an upright posture. So what you need to coach is maybe to be jogging, and then the acceleration to happen with a forward lean, okay, and then take off from that sense. Okay, so again, nothing changes from what you were looking for from the wall drives or the falling starts. You're still looking for the same thing. So, you might have them jog maybe 3 meters, and then it's accelerate by dropping and driving, okay, and pushing the ground away. Okay, so so that they'd be the main go-to ones. Once you're happy that somebody's got, I'll just finish off with this and then we'll take a break. Once you're happy that somebody's got their sound mechanics and they're really good in what they're doing, then we can look at moving on to resisted methods of training. Okay, and by resisted, I mean pulling a sled, being towed by a harness, wearing a weighted vest, using a parachute, running up a hill, okay? They're all helping your acceleration, okay? When you think of resisted methods of training, what you choose to do should only be, say, 10% body weight of the athlete, if we're talking about resisted sleds, or should only reduce the speed of the player by 10%, okay? So if it took them 3 seconds to run a certain distance, whatever resistance you add on to them should only reduce that. They should be running 3.3 seconds for that. So it's only slowed them down by 10%. There's a lot of research out there that says, yeah, we can build up to 30, 50, 70% sleds have been used in some rugby studies. But my advice would be start off with the 10% and see how you get on, okay? So what happens with a lot of players when you add on resisted load, mechanics fall apart, which is obviously what you don't want to happen, okay? But the same thing applies. You might do, what I often do is maybe they'll do 2 10-meter sprints with a sled at 10% body weight, and then they might do 2 sprints to 10 meters without the sled. That would be 1 set, and then we'll take maybe 5 minutes break and do it again, okay? So the only thing that might change with resisted work is that you might add on a little bit of extra recovery, okay? Again, if the mechanics start to fall apart, if fatigue sets in, scrap the sleds and just stick with getting the same mechanics back in. If you are to use hills, the hill that you're using should be only at around a 4% incline. So we're not talking about hills where people are trying to run up the steepest hill you can find, just a very low gradient, okay? And a lot of the times, like simple resisted work can actually help with somebody getting those postures that you're looking for, okay? If you are, maybe they're not getting enough of a forward lean, by adding a little bit of resistance, pulling them back, okay? If I had a toe on me here, it can just help with those body postures, okay? And again, make sure if you're dealing with team sport athletes, you'll often find sometimes when they get these toes and sleds on them, they try and pull each other back, and you know, I've seen cables snap and people get injured in that, so just be careful with them when you are doing them at any point, okay? But again, really good for working on posture, pushing, working on increasing stride length through that acceleration zone. And again, yeah, just maybe a little bit of extra recovery is all that's really needed. Okay, so what we might do is take a 10, 15-minute break, maybe 10-minute break here. If you have any questions on what we've covered so far, type them in, and then we can start off with any of those questions that you might have. And then after that, we'll move on to your deceleration, change of direction, and some maximum velocity work. Thanks a mil. Hi everyone, yeah, okay, so welcome back. I think there's two, maybe or three questions from what we've just covered, so we'll start with them before we go on. So Luke.
For field-based sports, the speed session would be part of the training session or standalone session?
Okay, so just in case you didn't hear the question there, so for field sports, should the speed session be a standalone session or maybe part of the main session? So again, I suppose that's going to depend on what time you have available to you. If the players only train twice a week and then have a match at the weekend, then I'd put that speed session in as part of the main session. So you might do warm-up, then you might go into 10-15 minutes of speed work, and then they go into their normal training, whatever is going on the pitch or court, for example. If you're dealing with a team that maybe trains 5 times a week and you've got a little bit more exposure to them, then the speed work might be a standalone session. So you might, have a pure linear speed session where they focus on acceleration and deceleration, and then you could have a second session during the week that might be all of your change of direction work. Okay, where you might have a little bit more time, you might be able to, build up to around 40 minutes worth of session work done between your warm-up, etc. So again, it kind of depends, but for most of you, you'll probably be dealing with, club teams or that. So the way I'd map out your training, minimum 1 speed session a week all through the year. If you have a little bit more time, get in 2 speed sessions a week, but again, those sessions are just put in after your warm-up, so get them done when the players are fresh. You might only be 10-15 minutes exposure, that's enough, and then they go on to their main session. So yeah, I suppose it depends what you're working with.
Yeah, I think you've answered the next question there, which was, would you do speed work with a team sport pre-season and then refresh during the regular season?
Yeah, so speed work should be done all year round, okay? So what you'll find a lot of teams do is they might ignore it in pre-season, and then right before the start of the season they ramp up and do all their speed work then, and then they're like, oh, players get injured from doing speed work. No, they just haven't been given proper exposure to it. Okay, so my advice would be pre-season, try and have 2 exposures a week, and even when it comes to in-season, keeping at least 1 speed session exposure a week in, even the week of games, okay? It might be a slightly less volume of work that's done, but consistent exposure is going to be important to obviously develop speed, keep speed, and reduce the risk of injuries occurring from speed work that might be done.
The last one then was the warm-up, and
how long would you spend on a warm-up? Okay, so again, if you've lots of time, you might be able to spend a little bit longer, but a minimum of say 10 to 15 minutes of warm-up is ideal, okay? So if the session is only an hour long, you might only have 10 minutes of your warm-up, 10 minutes of a speed session, and then they're allowed off on the pitch then for 40 minutes. If you've got an hour and a half, you might creep it to 15 minutes. If you think about a track and field sprinter, okay, which is kind of the goal of what you're aiming towards to be, a track and field sprinter before they race might spend an hour on their warm-up alone to get them ready to run 100 meters, okay? So working back off that, the warm-up is important, okay? Do spend time at it. Just make sure you're not dilly-dallying, that they do consistently move, you get all the work done, and that they're ready to run at 100% intensity, that they take a short break, get some water, and then you're straight into the actual session. But minimum, I would say 10 to 15 minutes, maximum up to an hour. Okay? Is that it? Yeah, okay, there are all the questions for now. Again, if you think of any more questions, or if I didn't answer the question properly for you there, just type them in and we'll come to them at the end, and we'll also go through the assignment at the end of this next kind of section. Probably be in and around the same amount of time as we've just done. Okay, so we'll move on to deceleration. Okay, so deceleration I find is not coached very often. It's not coached very well when it is coached. So again, structure your training so that you include it. Okay, deceleration is going to occur in field sports, court sports. Okay, it's not going to occur in like sprint events, but it will occur in like javelins. If you're dealing with a javelin thrower, they have to decelerate and stop in a line. So it is in track and field as well. So if we think of mechanics of deceleration, it's basically the opposite of acceleration, okay? So if I'm decelerating, I'm sprinting this direction, I need to decelerate. What I need to think about is leaning backwards, okay? Shift my shoulders backwards, stick my feet out in front of me, okay, to slow myself down, and lower my center of mass by bending through my hips, knees, and ankles, okay? So coming downwards, okay, as opposed to acceleration, we're thinking more triple extension, bringing my body upwards slightly. Deceleration, we're leaning back, okay? First go-to drill that I'd do for anybody with deceleration. So the big difference, and I suppose injury risk that we've got with deceleration, is the high eccentric load that happens, okay? So often players get injured, maybe if they haven't done any training, they go out and they play a match. Often the injury will come from deceleration that they haven't been exposed to, okay? So what I would start off with would be something like a drop landing, okay? Just to give some form of exposure, but don't lose my mic here. So just to give an exposure of eccentric loading, bending through my hips, knees, and ankles to take on force. Okay, so you can see here, I've landed in a nice solid position, upright, good posture. I haven't collapsed down on myself, and I've bent through my hips, knees, and ankles. Okay, so that'd be my starting point. Okay, drop and stick. Trying to land nice and soft, full flat foot on the ground, and not too loud, okay? So a bad rep, I suppose, would be, okay, you can maybe hear the difference in that. That's a lot more force gone up through my joints, up through my tissues. If I repetitively landed like that, injury risk goes straight up. Okay, so that's my first starting point, a drop and stick drill. That's probably a bit high to start off with, so starting on something a bit lower, maybe 20, 30 centimeters, maybe doing 5 reps, take a little break, do another 5 reps, building up to maybe 2 sets, 3 sets of 10 to start off with exposure, okay? So again, if you're thinking of adding in deceleration work, but maybe the first 3 weeks of the program you're gonna work on acceleration, this might be included as your intro deceleration work, okay? So in your end stage warm-up, you might do 2 sets of 5 drop and sticks as part of your potentiation section for what's to come in weeks to come, okay? What I might do then is a drop jump, okay? So just again, trying to, because obviously in sport, we're gonna decelerate and then re-accelerate, so to help get ready for that. Nice and soft, we don't have to be too explosive with it to begin with, but just getting used to decelerating, absorbing force eccentrically through the tissues to concentrically move again, okay? So exactly what would happen on the pitch. So nice and soft, okay? So that'll be your next go-to one. And then after that, I might include some drop and cuts, okay? So I'm just gonna drop, take a step to my right, drop, take a step to my left, okay? Might just have my hands on my hips, or I might just by my side, push, okay? So drop, cut. Again, what will happen in team sports, you might accelerate, decelerate into a position, and then re-accelerate to my right or my left, so push, okay? So when we get onto our change of direction work, always remember, if I want to go to my right, I'm going to push primarily off my left leg. If I want to go to my left, I'm going to push primarily off my right leg. So that's what you should be focusing on your drop and cut drills, okay? Push, okay, to get away. Okay, so again, that's your starting point with deceleration, okay? Drop and sticks, drop and cuts, and drop jumps. Again, working the whole time on those good body posture positions. My next go-to drill then would be decelerate to your athletic stick position, okay? So the best way of doing that is having some sort of line, okay, that a player can run to, okay? And basically having them go back at least 5 meters, maybe back even 10, and they're just going to accelerate in, but then they have to decelerate and stick on the line, okay? So coming in and sticking, okay? So from the side, what that should look like is accelerating out, and then as they want to come to stick to a line, coming backwards, leaning, and coming down with my center of mass, okay? So if they come to stick on the line, we want them to be in this athletic ready position, okay, which is like your quarter squat position. Okay, solid through their core, okay, if they got a knock from a player, that they wouldn't fall over, okay? If they're too tall, okay, that's going to be hard to re-accelerate from that position, okay? If they're too low, that's equally too hard of a position to get out of. Whereas in this athletic ready position, they are able to go in the multiple directions that they might need to on a field or on a court. Okay, so getting used to this solid position. Okay, so often what I do, I'd have maybe 3 or 4 players go at a time, come in, stick on the line, and then I might come in and give them a little bit of a push, a little bit of a shove, see how solid a position if they are in, okay? And that reinforces what you're looking for in terms of body position, strong core, being solid where you want them to be, feet stuck to the ground, okay? Often you'll find the first time, don't warn the players you're doing it, come in and just give them the shove, and you'll often find they just fall backwards, okay? So because you're teaching them to lean backwards, sometimes they lean too far back and they'll naturally just fall back out of it, which is obviously not what we want, okay? So coming in and actually giving the little push absorbs that, okay? So yeah, so that's my first one, accelerate in to stick. Next one I go to, depending on the sport that you're dealing with, but at the moment I'm coaching hockey, so a lot of their deceleration position will be in a lunge position, okay? So now I do a lot of drills that will have them accelerate in and stick in like a lunge position. So they'll come in, get low, and stick in this position here. Okay, starting off, I'll cue them to slap their hands onto the knee that's out in front. Okay, and that's just enforcing them. Yeah, this is the leg that needs to be stable. This is the leg I'm going to push back off again. Okay, so I'll have them do that off both legs because they can at times obviously have their right foot forward. So they'll come in, drop down, again, stick in a good solid position like so. Take your time with those. You might, give them starting over, your 5 meters coming in and sticking, and then bringing it back over 10 meters coming in and sticking. And just if they start to do them, you're doing, 4 reps on each leg, you might give that little bit extra recovery because of that eccentric load that's happening. But again, judging by what you see in front of you. Okay, so coming in, accelerate in, come down nice and low, stick, hold that good posture. Okay, so that's your starting point with deceleration. Next movement I go towards would be backpedaling. So again, depends on the sport you're dealing with, but most sports will involve some form of backpedaling. And again, it's very rarely coached, but it is worth taking a little bit of time with it. So my coaching cue for backpedaling is to think that you're on a skateboard, but skating yourself backwards that way, okay? So again, to be a little bit lower to the ground and pushing the ground that way to send yourself backwards. Okay, what I find most players do when you tell them to backpedal, they do these little kicks of heels coming up towards their bum, and they don't really actually push the ground away to move backwards. Okay, so actually spending a little bit of time on foot position for backpedaling is worthwhile, okay? Once you're happy that their backpedaling mechanics are good, the next drill I'd move to would be an acceleration into a deceleration into a backpedal, okay? So moving forwards, backpedaling backwards, coming forwards, backpedaling backwards, okay? So over 5 meters even to begin with. Okay, I'm just going to do it at a slow pace, but accelerate out, backpedal, stick, deceleration, stick, and then backpedal. Okay, so just spending time getting low, good stick position, I'm solid, and then backpedal, back out of it, back to the start. Okay, it might be accelerate out, stick in a lunge, and then get out of that, big push off the front leg, backpedal, and maybe one on the opposite side. Okay, to make that a little bit more, maybe like what might happen in sport, you might go out 5, back 5, out 10, back 10, okay? If we add all that up, that's about a 30-meter effort or so, 20-meter effort at least. No, 30-meter effort, okay? So a little bit more recovery is going to be needed for that sort of effort as opposed to, just doing that go, 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 repeat, 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 okay? If you didn't give them rest and recovery, it would take them a little bit of time to recover. Okay, so that's acceleration, deceleration, backpedaling, and acceleration, deceleration combined. Okay, what we'll move to now before we talk about change of direction is just lateral moving, which I've already briefly mentioned when we did our drop and cuts. Okay, but for lateral movement, a lot of the time when you see somebody doing, and if I ask somebody to move right or left before coaching them, I get a lot of this, okay, yeah, where they're up really high and their heels are clicking together, okay? What's useless about this position here, being up nice and tall, if I need to change direction and move anywhere, it's going to be very hard. It's going to take time, okay? This position here is much better, okay? So when you're coaching any form of lateral movement, the cue should be that feet should never come together. They should only ever be hip width apart, because from this position at least, again, I can move, okay? This position I can move. This position I can't generate a lot of force from here, okay? And obviously acceleration and movement force is needed to be produced, okay? So my first movement from here would be to drop and then go, but the player's gone, okay? The ball is gone, I can't get to it as quick as I want. Okay, so movement should be slow to begin with, but staying low, okay? Imagine yourself, your cue is that you're in a tunnel that's only 4 foot high. Okay, get low, stay low within it, and watch foot position, okay? Often I find as well, if somebody's had, you know, they've rolled their ankle before, when they come down like this, and they want to move to their right, toes start pointing out in the direction that they want to go, okay? Again, if I need to change direction and go that way, my first movement has to be lift my foot, turn, so I can push. Okay, so just watch the position of people's feet. They should be slightly forward or maybe slightly turned out, but this kind of movement shouldn't be happening, okay? Unless your archery is your sport. I think foots go forward, okay? So again, just working on pushing, you know, pushing my to go left, push right, to go left, push off my right foot, and you might just do a little bit of movement over and back, okay? Taking time again on the mechanics, so that you've got the mechanics good and sound before we move on to more of our change of direction work. Okay, so that's our lateral movements. Now we'll talk about change of direction more so. So we've gone straight lines, now we need to cut and turn, okay? What we'll start off with would be planned agility. So planned meaning the player knows what's going to happen, okay? Really good starting point to get mechanics right, okay? But obviously in sport, most of the time you don't know what direction you need to go, okay? So that's when you'll move on to reactive agility, okay? But we'll start with planned agility. So loads of planned agility drills that you can do. You've got your T drills, W, L, your Illinois, loads of different drills like that, okay? So by planned, we mean we know what's going to happen. So a T drill, for example, say I've got a cone here in front of me. Imagine I've got a cone over here 5 meters to the right, and I've got a cone over here to the left. You instruct the player, accelerate forwards, touch the cone, sidestep to your right. You're going to sidestep all the way back over to your left, come back to the middle, touch the cone, and back pedal back the 5 meters. Okay, so the player knows exactly what's happening. They know that when they decelerate in here, you're looking for body positions to be nice and low. You're looking for good sidestepping over to the right and the left. And again, a good back pedal to get them back to the start. If you were to do an L run, okay, it might just be accelerate forwards and a cut and turn, okay, the direction that you want them to go. And planting and cutting, you should spend some time on that. So again, it's accelerate forward. If I want to go to my right, I'm planting with my left foot and accelerating away to my right. Again, you might have a cone at yellow. Like a yellow cone and a red cone, which is a right and a left. Okay, and again, you might just spend some time on that, where they accelerate in, plant and cut, accelerate away. A W, which would be kind of like your back pedaling, forward pedaling in a W position. Your Illinois, which might involve weaving in and out and backwards. There's loads of planned agility drills out there, okay? We won't spend much time going over them all, but just to ensure whichever planned agility drill you pick, that you have your specific coaching cue on what you're working on for that planned agility drill. So if it is you want to work on planting and cutting, then you might choose your Y drill because that involves a plant and a cut out where you want to go. If you want to work on lateral shuffling, you might pick your T drill because that involves a lot of planting and cutting. If you want to work on acceleration, deceleration, backpedaling, your Y drill might be the one that you choose for that. So again, look at the demands of the sport, look at what the drills you could use to match those demands and include them there. Okay, so again, spend time on those, especially with novice athletes who haven't got much background in speed training, because that will get their mechanics right, okay? But obviously in sport, reaction is a big part of the game, okay, of most games, all games. Okay, we've got 3 different types of reaction that need to be worked on, again, depending on the sport. So our 3 different types of reaction are simple, choice, and recognition reaction. Okay, simple reaction, bang of a gun. Okay, so a sprinter has to react to the bang of the gun. A swimmer will react to the beep at the start of their race. Choice reaction, think of you're running towards something, you've got a choice to turn right or left, okay? You have a choice to either go get the ball or else get in a better position for that player to give you the ball next. Okay, there's no negative outcome in it, but you have to decide on what you want to do and do it as quickly as possible, okay? That's your choice reaction. Most field sports, court sports will involve choice. And then you've got recognition reaction, okay, which is something that is more learnt over time. So for example, you're a tennis player, you play against the same opponent very often throughout the year. You recognize by a body position that they make that they're going to put topspin or backspin on that ball. So before they even hit the ball, you recognize what's going to happen, okay? In field sports, you know that one player preferably takes the ball on their right side the whole time. So if you're defending them, you're going to be blocking their right side as much as possible, okay, because you know they're more comfortable maybe on that side. So again, that's more learned over time. It's more experienced athletes that have recognition. But again, you can design drills that include recognition reaction. Okay, so starting off with coaching, reaction then is more important before we move to reactive agility. So coaching reaction then. Okay, starting point for me with coaching reaction would be ball drop drills. Okay, so getting yourself a packet of tennis balls and divvying them out and having players work in pairs. Okay, so the first one I do would be, I'd have a player here, myself, we'd be doing ball drop drills, and I'd literally be holding the ball in front of them. The ball drops once and then they have to catch it. So they might be standing back about 2 meters. They're waiting for the ball to drop. Once it drops, they're in to catch the ball. Okay. So again, now if we think about like your signals that you're giving, okay, depending on the sport, you'll have your auditory signal, what you hear, you'll have what you see, and you'll have what you feel, okay? So reaction has to be built in what happens in sports. So here we're working on a visual reaction. They see the ball, they come in and then they get it, okay? How I make that harder, okay, I can lower the height that I'm going to drop the tennis ball from, or I can push the player back even further, that they have to jump in and react and move a lot quicker to get to the ball to catch it. Okay, so this is my visual, okay, dropping the ball, and then my auditory then, so what I'll do basically, I'll be holding the ball again, the player will turn around, have their back to me now, and then they have to, when they hear the ball bounce, turn and catch it, okay? And then kinesthetic might be you might touch them, and then they have to jump when they feel the touch of you touching them, okay? So different ways of building in reaction, okay? So if you're dealing with kids, then a ruler drop test is very handy, okay? So again, fun game, holding a ruler, you've got your hands here holding a ruler, dropping the ruler, and they basically have to catch the ruler. Or a game of slaps, okay, played in the playground, okay, getting your hands out of the way, learning to react and move out of the way. Is there a question? Yeah.
When you're doing the reactive ones, so for instance, rugby, would you ask the player to hold the ball during the drills, or if it's hurling, would they hold the hurley during the drills?
Yeah, so if you're a sport that has an implement, shall we say, hockey, if you've got a hockey stick, hurling, football, depending what you're carrying. So I'll always start off without the implement. Okay, I'll spend time on getting mechanics right without the implement. As soon as I feel that their mechanics are good, then I'll bring the implement into it. Okay, so start off without it, spend time, because the holding the implement is going to be distracting. For some players, when you take the implement away, they're going to feel very much out of their comfort zone. Okay, but that'll just allow them to spend a bit more time. So I get rid of the implement first and then bring it in. Okay, and again, so maybe the planned agility drills are done without the implement, and then we move to more reactive agility. Then the implement comes back in, because we might start adding in a ball coming at them, or having to, catch a ball in the drill. So that's when I'd more bring the implement in when we get to more the reactive kind of work. Okay, so quick recap then, we've got simple, choice and recognition reaction. We've got our auditory, visual and kinesthetic stimuli. So again, depending on what the sport is, how you implement those now going forward into our reactive agility drills. Okay, so starting point, okay, say we want to do acceleration work, that's reactive, okay? So what I would do then would be maybe get-ups, okay? So where I'm going to have the player get up off the ground on the blow of a whistle, okay? So I'm going to have them down on the ground, they're lying down on their chest. When they hear the whistle, then they get up and they sprint their 10 meters, okay? I might do chasing drills, okay, where they have to react to another player's movement, okay? So I'm the player here. I'm looking at another player behind me that's 2 meters behind me, and I'm watching them, I'm waiting for them to move. They're lying down on the ground. I can only accelerate 10 meters away as soon as they get up off the ground, okay? And they're trying to chase me down. So I'm working off movement, okay? I'm watching somebody else's movement for me to react and go, okay? Simple, okay? It's a simple reaction. I'm just looking for movement, but as soon as they move, I go, okay? Again, that's going to increase everything a little bit. So maybe what I should have said at the beginning, all of your work should be done in a non-competitive environment to start off with, okay? Because as soon as we add in competition, all that somebody wants to think about is winning, as opposed to the process of getting there, okay? So spend time initially, non-competitive environment, single file, one by one, and then as the mechanics get better, add in the competitive environment, such as kind of these chasing drills, which players love, they're fun as well. Okay, so that would be a simple reaction drill for acceleration, moving, getting away. A choice reaction drill, I've got a yellow cone and I've got a blue cone. I'm off with my colours, so I'll probably say red now here. But what we'll have is somebody accelerate forward. Okay, once they hit this line, I'm going to shout yellow or blue, and then they have to get to the yellow or the blue cone that I call. Okay, so on that drill there, we're working on acceleration, and we're working on cutting, and we're working on choice reaction. Okay, you can see now we've got building blocks moving forward. Okay, so accelerate forward. Okay, yellow, plant, cut, and accelerate out to my yellow cone that might be 5 or 10 meters away. Okay, recognition. Okay, we could make a recognition drill. Okay, by person behind the camera there now is going to pass a ball, okay, to me. He's not going to say which way he's going to pass it, right or left, but I now have to read his body positions of where the ball is going to go. So again, I might be running forward as soon as I get to the line, he might line himself up to kick the ball to the right or left, and going by his body positions, I'm recognizing the ball's going to the right, so I'm going to turn and get in position here to catch the ball to my right. Okay, so that would be a recognition drill, again working on body positions. What else have we got for reaction? Okay, so if you're, another really good drill would be your mirror box drills. Okay, so I set myself up in a square here. I've got 4 different cones, and I've got another square here. We've got another player in the middle of this one. Okay, if I step forward to touch this cone here, the player inside this box will come forward and mirror me, okay? So they'll do exactly what I'm doing and come back, okay? So this is just learning about somebody else's body posture and reacting to movement of what somebody else does, okay? So obviously what happens on a pitch or a court, we're reacting to how somebody moves. So that's a good one there, okay? Or else we could have 4 different cones. So you could set up multiples of these on a pitch. Every player is inside their own box. We've got like yellow, blue, red and a black cone, and all the coach is doing is shouting different colours. Yellow, black, okay, they have to get down and touch. Blue, okay, they have to get down and touch the cone, okay? So that is your choice reaction. You have to get in to whichever colour is called and move as quickly as you can. So there's lots of different ways that you can build them up, lots of different ways that you can progress them, make them harder, and make them, yeah, just progress them, okay? So we've gone through get-ups, so that will be lying on your front. Get-ups you can have lying on your back, okay? That would be prevalent maybe in like rugby, where players will be knocked down to the ground, they're on their back, so getting used to getting up from that position. Kneeling, okay, that would be a common enough one as well, to get up from a kneeling position and drive, reaction work. Another good one actually for with the ball would be an overhead throw. So say for example I'm standing here in a 2-point position, 2-point because I've got 2 feet on the ground, okay, I'm ready to go. My partner is just behind me and I have to react to the ball coming over my shoulder. It's going to bounce once and I have to catch it, okay? So I'm waiting to see that ball, so visual stimuli, and then as soon as I see it, I accelerate out and try and catch the ball, okay? It's not always going to come forward, okay? It might go slightly to the right, it might go slightly to the left, but we can mix it up. Again, if you've got a wall, really good for hurling players. If you've got a wall, you could do the same overhead and hitting a wall, and they have to react and catch the ball off the wall. Okay, so spending time on building that type of reaction is really worthwhile, especially with your younger players. And again, senior players, because sometimes a lot of them mightn't have done it in a good amount of time. I've talked about our turn and chase drills as well. Yeah, they're really useful. Something that we haven't mentioned, I suppose, that you can start off with if we go back to our planned agility would be the use of ladder drills and the use of cones and things like that for movement, okay? So you've all seen ladder drills done before. You know, you have a ladder laid out. They're very prevalent in soccer, I suppose, probably use them the most. You know, maybe in and out drills, you know, footwork, okay? So ladder drills definitely have their place. They are good for your footwork, quickness, stepping, those elements, they are really good. The biggest problem though with ladder drills is the fact that most of the time the player is going to be looking down, okay? And when on a pitch you're going to see somebody doing this kind of movement, okay? So your head is down an awful lot of the time. A way of getting out of that is having the player look up and to be throwing and catching a ball, you know, as they go through the ladder. So that's one way of getting over that issue. But then the biggest problem with it is that, again, it's planned. They know exactly what they have to do, okay? It's very often, it's hard to come up with a reactive ladder drill, okay? So they have their place, just don't spend all year doing the same ladder drills. Players will be bored, the benefit will start to leave, okay? They won't be getting as much out of it as they would have at the beginning, but there definitely is a place for it. And also with your more junior athletes, really good for footwork and teaching quickness and training the brain power in that sense. What, I was going to say something there now, I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, what we'll talk about with ladders maybe at the next workshop is their use on cones for plyometrics. Okay, so that is part of agility, that is part of teaching change of direction, but we're not going to cover that in today's workshop. We'll cover all of that the next day. So just keep that in mind, that I haven't not included it, it just will be covered the next day. Okay, so that's, there's also loads of games that you can play. So if you go through Moodle, there should be a file, I'm not really sure what it's called, but it has like a load of different games in there that you can use with players, okay? And they're great fun. You've got like reaction sparklers. So say for example, I've got 5 players lined up here, and I've got another 5 players opposite them, okay? I give each player a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each team, and I've got a blue end and I've got a yellow end. I'm going to call blue 1. Both players that are named number 1 come into the middle, and they have to race each other to get to the blue end. I can't remember which end is blue. etc. So there's loads of different games like that which are really useful for team sports, especially even at the end of training. You know, if you didn't get to do any speed work at the beginning, but you finished the session and you want to just work on a little bit of reaction. So I always think it is good to add in some speed. Obviously should be done when players are fresh, but working on that reaction element when a player is fatigued to obviously instigate what happens towards the end of a game. These type of games are also very useful, okay, because they're fun. They have to use their brain power to react, and you can do loads of different ways. They might have to come into the middle, come out, sprint around a cone and accelerate down. Loads of different ways of coming up with them. Your mirror drills are in there, so that's a very useful file to refer to, for team racing, reaction sparklers, those all kind of drills. Okay, so that's kind of your reactive agility. You can build up loads and loads of drills. So what we normally do in the workshop, and maybe you might spend 15 minutes now at the end of this, of coming up with 2 or 3 reactive agility drills for the sport that you deal with, okay? So if you're basketball coaching, hurling, football, tennis, whatever it might be, maybe at the end of this, when we're finished going through maximum velocity and the project, that you just spend a little bit of time coming up with 3 maybe reactive agility drills for the sport in question, okay? So for the drill that you choose, pick what type of reaction you're working with and what the stimuli is that you want to include for the sport. Okay, and they're handy and you can just build them up over time, what you're going to be working on. Okay, so that's reactive agility. Last thing then, just to chat about, is going to be maximum velocity. Okay, so when we think of the 100-meter model of sprinting, okay, our first 30 meters is generally focused on acceleration, okay, where we're in this position here, okay, our 45-degree angle, and then by 30 meters, okay, your elite sprinters will be in their upright position. So your maximum velocity phase of sprinting is generally from 30 to 60 meters. With the most elite athletes, their fastest block will be 50 to 60 meters into the race, okay? From 60 meters to the finish, there is actually deceleration occurring, so they start to slow down. Some people think that people speed up in the end. No, the person who slows down the least is probably the one who's going to win the race if they are neck and neck at 60 meters. Okay, so again, coming back to that model, my first 10 meters, I'm completely down, I'm driving, I'm pushing. Then I'm in what's the transition phase, where I'm working on coming towards that upright posture, and then by 30 meters, I'm fully up in my maximum velocity phase. Okay, so that's the 100-meter model, elite sprinter. Most of us are going to be dealing with team sport athletes where they might only be able to accelerate for 10 meters to start with, and then they're upright. But we should try and push that out. So try and push them out to 15 meters, accelerate out to 20 meters, 25 meters even, okay? So what happens then when we get to maximum velocity? So if your player is at 10 meters and they're upright, they're at their maximum velocity, they're at their top speed, okay, or building towards it at least. So we have to work on the mechanics of what happens there. Okay, some people say, oh, maximum velocity doesn't occur in any team sports. It absolutely does. A lot of maximum velocity, I think, takes place away from the ball. Okay, so our players are actually gunning to get into position. Okay, so if you actually watch a lot of what's happening away from the ball, maximum velocity does occur probably a lot more often than we give it credit for. Okay, so it should be trained. Players should be given exposure to it, because if not, what we'll find, they'll get injured. Okay, they'll play a match, a winger in rugby will come flying down the side and a hamstring will go, okay, and because they haven't got exposure to it. Okay, so it should always be built into your plan. How we work on it then is flying runs, so flying 10, 20 or 30 meter sprints. Okay, and what I mean by that is, if we're doing a flying 10-meter sprint, I'm going to give a player at least 20 meters of a run in, and then there's a 10-meter zone where they're going to hold maximum velocity. So by the time they reach the first cone, they're at their top speed, and then they just hold it through for 10 meters, and then they take their time slowing down. Okay, and what I mean by being at their top speed, so they should be in that upright posture, okay, When we go back to our A march drills, this is the posture we're looking for, okay, where they've got their knee up, their toe up, they're stepping over their inside leg, okay, and they're holding really good positions for that 10 meters, and then they're going down, okay. That run should be relaxed, okay, their shoulders should be dropped, they shouldn't be tense, okay. If they're tense, that's going to slow them down, so it should be a nice relaxed run, okay. If we're talking about elite sprinters doing this type of session in training, what they might do is 6 30-meter flies with at least a 30-meter run in, okay? So when we add that up, that's at least a 60-meter sprint, okay? So the recovery should be at least 6 minutes between each of those runs, okay? So again, that's going to take you about 35, 40 minutes to do that entire session. Okay. If you got team sport athletes to do that, I'm pretty sure a lot of you would struggle with your coach to allow you to get that done. But what you might do is, okay, we're going to do some acceleration work. I'm going to do 6 20-meter sprints, and then I'm going to add in 2 15-meter flies at the end. And between those 2 15-meter flies, they're going to take 4 minutes rest at least, okay, because they're going to get a 15 to 20-meter run in, and then they're going to have their fly, and then they come back. So that's a good way of introducing it and giving exposure to the athletes, okay? So again, it's not an area where I think you'll ever have a point where you solely do maximum velocity with field sport athletes. Again, if you're dealing with court sports, basketball, tennis, badminton, that's never going to happen, okay? You're never going to have to work on maximum velocity, but soccer, hurling, football, rugby, hockey, okay, maximum velocity is going to occur in those sports, so time should be given to it. Any questions on any of that at the moment? Okay, if you want to think about any questions you might want to ask, I'm just going to grab my phone so I can chat through your assignment. So this is assignment 1, I think it's due on the 31st of January. I could be wrong on that, but I think I saw that when I opened this up earlier. Okay, so we've got 2 parts to this assignment. It should be no more than 2,500 words. Please try stick to that with 10% either way. There's no need for you to be going over on it. Okay, so you've got 2 parts. The first part is worth 30 marks. Okay, so if I were you guys, I'd be giving 30% of my word count to this section. Okay, and what you need to do is, part 1, it's looking at the elements of speed. Explain and describe the following elements of speed in sport. So acceleration, deceleration, and maximum velocity. And what you need to include is a clear definition that should be referenced, okay, with support from the literature. You have to give 2 clear sporting examples. Okay, for those sporting examples, don't just write acceleration happens in rugby, full stop. Okay, give a clear example, okay, when a player is trying to get into a position, when the player is trying to get away from a defender, whatever it might be, give a clear example within that sport. Give a clear method of training. Okay, so for acceleration, you could talk about your wall drives, your falling starts, resisted sprints. Maximum velocity, you could talk about the use of flying sprints, deceleration, reduction and stopping, including your eccentric loading, whatever it might be. So just make sure that you use references throughout, support your answer from the literature, but there doesn't need to be too much words, doesn't need to be too long explaining. And then finally, you actually have to include coaching cues. Okay, so whatever your coaching cues might be for each of those 3 elements. Okay, and then your next part is a case study. That's worth 70 marks. Okay, so what you have to do for this, so you're going to be given a squad that you're working with. It's an academy rugby squad. They're limited in speed training, but have done a lot of strength and power work. You're basically being asked to write a 4-week plan for their pre-season work. They're coming into their second 4-week block, and you have to write 1 speed session per week and detail how that's going to be progressed across the 4 weeks. Okay, so you have to detail the initial week 1 and then work out the progressions week 2, week 3, and week 4 for that. Okay, it's going to give you information on the needs analysis and screening that had happened. Okay, so again, when it comes to detailing out your warm-up, you might detail how you address the deficiencies from the screening. And so what you have to do within each session then, across the 4 weeks, first of all, you have to detail the warm-up. Okay, so in the warm-up, you have to detail exercises that you're going to include in the warm-up. The organisation and layout of the warm-up. So I'm pretty sure you're told that it takes place on outdoor on a pitch. So again, how are you laying out the warm-up? What cones are you going to lay out? If you want to put in a figure diagram of what the layout of the warm-up looks like. And coaching points of any of the technical drills that you're going to use within that. Okay, so if you use your A marches, your B marches, etc., detail out the coaching points for that. If you have them doing 10 squats, 10 lunges, and 10 glute bridges, we don't need to know the coaching cues for any of that sort of work. Okay, for this project, ideally think about it that if you ended up getting sick and you couldn't go to the training session that's planned, that if I picked up that planned training session, I'd be able to administer it exactly as you have thought it out in your head. Okay, so that's how you should be mapping it out so that it makes full sense for it. So make sure that that's 15 marks for the warm-up. So make sure they're able to run. If it's acceleration work, that there's acceleration done in the warm-up. If you're progressing on to change of direction, that some of that work is done in the warm-up as well. Then the next part is drills that make up the main session. Okay, that's worth 25 marks. Okay, that's going to be your reps, your rest, what is the drill, your coaching points, illustrations maybe. So if you're going to be including something that you're calling an X drill, okay, you have to detail out what that X drill is. That might be, again, with a figure diagram. It might be 3-4 bullet points, okay? But make sure that I know what you mean by an X drill. Again, include any coaching points that are related to the drills and any of the techniques that you're looking for within it. Then you've got 20 marks that's worth the progressions across the 4 weeks, okay? So for example, you don't have to do it this way, but a way of doing it might be week 1, you're focusing purely on acceleration. Week 2, you're going to focus on acceleration and deceleration. Week 3, you're going to add in change of direction, and week 4, it's going to become reactive, okay? It's going to be all reactive agility by week 4, okay? Progression in this is not going to be week 1, 6 10-meter sprints, week 2, 8 10-meter sprints, week 3, 10 10-meter sprints, week 4, 12 10-meter sprints. Okay, that's not a proper progression across each of the weeks. Yes, it can be done, but let's think a little bit more outside the box, especially keeping an eye on the sport, which is rugby. And then referencing, you've got 10 marks for that. So again, because you're module 5 at this point, yeah, speed is module 5, just checking there, you should be able to be referencing quite well. Make sure you use your Harvard referencing. I'd be looking for 8 to 10 references to be used for this project across everything. Okay, there is a paper that'll probably be up that it shows you, goes through the demands of rugby, so make sure you implement that with the correct distances that they sprint over. You might want to split them into forwards and backs based on research. You don't have to do that because they're very much novices, but if you want to, you could do that as well. If you don't want to include any works on maximum velocity, that's fine. You're not going to be marked down for doing that. If you include it, make sure that you go through the correct process of your reps, rest, recovery, and give a good rationale for including it. Maybe, you know, certain players won't be doing any form of maximum velocity. Yeah, so any questions?
I have a question, but I don't think it's related to the assignment. Would you include elements of acceleration, deceleration, and max velocity in the same session?
Okay, so the question was, would I include acceleration, deceleration, and maximum velocity within the same session? So with a novice, I definitely wouldn't. That's going to be too much exposure for that athlete. With a field sport athlete, I would rarely do maximum velocity as a standalone session. But I would probably give exposure. So I probably might look at doing a bit of acceleration and maximum velocity together. I probably wouldn't do acceleration, deceleration, and maximum velocity together, because the load of the eccentric work from the deceleration, along with the nervous system load that goes with maximum velocity, with most players that aren't fully trained in speed, that's probably going to be a little bit too much. but giving exposure of acceleration and maximum velocity within the same session. Once they've done a couple of sessions with you and you've built up tolerance slowly, and your rep range and your distances and your recoveries are appropriate, then I would look at including that. Again, if you only have one speed session a week, you're going to have to. If you are able to do 2 speed sessions a week, you might split them separately. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you might just do maximum velocity one day that week that you're going to do 4 sprints, that's all you've got, with 5 minutes between each of them, depending on the athlete that you're dealing with. But yeah. Any other questions? If you have any other questions in relation to the assignment, the emails are there for the staff and the module leaders on this. So just shoot us an email and we can answer any of them. Thanks a million and see you soon.